Yeah, what a weekend it has been in Great Britannia, eh? Great Britain, Great Britannia. Like, we all knew that things were getting bad in this country, but we didn't know how bad they were going to get on Saturday. Now, I'm just going to preface this whole stream with this little bit here, right? Last Wednesday, I was researching this. I was going to make a video. Now, the production of this video has been struck down by curse after curse after curse. So I won't bore you with that, but in the time it took me between starting this video idea and today, I could not have expected the police to have acted in such a barbaric way towards people. It just blows my mind. And this makes what I'm going to talk about today that little bit more important. Last week, Priti Patel and Robert Buckland announced a justice overhaul to the British criminal justice system. Well, what I have not been able to find out yet is whether these changes are intended to affect all of law, which is actually a very complicated matter because Scots law and English law are two separate things completely, so I don't know how this would work in that aspect. They want to overhaul justice in the UK. Last week, Robert Buckland and Priti Patel announced their latest attempts at overhauling or removing our freedoms, or, as they like to put it, their latest attempts to overhaul justice and better protect the public and back our police. Yeah, it's a crap sentence, but the important thing is, it's government sentence. Anyway, let's get down to the nitty gritty with a scoop from the big bad city, aka London. So I'm going to read you some stuff. The first place I went to for information for this video was the press release which was put out by government, by the Home Office and the Criminal Justice Area, aka Priti Patel, Robert Buckland. The following passages are taken directly from the press release that was put out last week. The Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill seeks to equip the police with powers and tools they need to better protect themselves and the public, while overhauling sentencing laws to keep serious sexual and violent offenders behind bars for longer, and placing greater emphasis on rehabilitation to better help offenders and turn their lives around and prevent further crimes. It goes on. These include whole life orders, WLOs, for child killers, with judges also allowed to impose this punishment on 18 to 20-year-olds in exceptional cases. For example, acts of terrorism, which cause mass loss of life. Child killers. And they mean children that kill, not people that kill children. Like, get your head around that one. The bill will also enshrine a police covenant in law, strengthening the support received by serving and retired officers, staff, and their families. In addition, maximum penalties will be doubled from 12 months to 2 years for those who assault police or other emergency workers, such as prison officers, fire personnel, or frontline health workers, helping to protect those who put their lives on the line to keep communities safe. I mean, before we continue, right, there are a lot more words in that press release, but thankfully the majority, if not all of it, was just rhetoric, and it's just not necessary for us to talk about it in this video. It wasn't even necessary for them to talk about it in the press release, because it is literally just them trying to persuade you. Like, I say this all the time, the word rhetoric, it doesn't mean political lies. Rhetoric is just persuasion. Like, rhetoric is just another word for someone trying to persuade you. That's all this is. Yeah, the press release, it was just full of rhetoric. What was the point of this announcement? And not me talking about new followers, but the police crime sentencing bill, whatever they want to call it. It's got such a convoluted name. Look, there we go. There's the name. The Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill 2021. What is the point of the announcement of this new proposed bill? Because this is not a bill. This is not a law yet. This is just a proposal. It is still in the stage where it's just a bill. The bill has not become an act. It is not law. So police shouldn't be doing this already. Even though they seem to be following these rules already, but that's another debate for down the line, isn't it? But what is the point in this announcement? Patel and Buckland claim they want to overhaul the UK's criminal justice system, and in some very small way, it really is kind of commendable. But in another very big and damning way, this exercise it really does look like an attempt to shoehorn a range of extremely authoritarian laws into existence in Britain under the veil of COVID-19 and, protecting us from an enemy, a virus, whatever. And this is the kicker. This is the bit that really gets me, innit? There's like a massive state of ideological amnesia within the Conservative Party, because we've got to remember they're aiming to overhaul the UK's criminal justice system. Now, they say that as if they're people that just got into power. That the Conservative Party have been in power for the last 10 years. The Conservative Party are the ones that set the rules we are going on now. They are overhauling their own rules. They're overhauling and this is what I mean about mass amnesia. The Conservative Party have totally forgotten that all these rules that are in place just now are rules that they pretty much put in place. But we've got to forget about that. We've got to forget that it was anything to do with the Tory party. All we've got to remember is the past has brought us laws that we can't work with anymore. Politicians will never look at the past, and they'll never look at like a negative past and say it was their own. They'll always blame the othering. And this is just what's happening here. We've got another mass case of mass Tory amnesia. They have forgot that in the last 10 years they had the ability to fix the criminal justice system, but they didn't, and if anything, they made it worse. Before we go any further, let's look for some positive within the press release. So, now, this was hard. I wanted to look at this in an objective but fair way. The announcement of new powers to halt the early release of offenders who pose a danger to the public. This is something that on the surface of it seems like it could be a good idea, you know? There is also the announcement that extended position of trust laws to protect teenagers from abusive sports coaches or religious leaders will be brought into being. Now, this is something that I also see as a good thing. Now, as many of my viewers know, I cover the equally insane world of professional wrestling, and around about the middle of last year there was a lot of noise generated by women within the British wrestling industry and in fact across the world who had been abused by trainers or people they felt they trusted within the wrestling industry. And this gained a lot of attention with the view that trainers shouldn't be dating people they're training, you know what I mean? Like any other sports training for that matter. I use wrestling because it's my own thing. We know there was a lot of drama with Celtic and football training, and like wrestling's got a bad bit, but in other sports it was 10 times worse. So like this whole concept of position of trust laws is something that I do kind of think is a good idea, because what that will do is it will make it an offence for any sports coach or religious leader to date or to have like a relationship with anyone that is under 18. Sadly, this is where the positivity is end though. Like that was literally all the good I could find from the statement they put out. And if I'm honest, and if I'm brutally honest with myself, even the prior examples that I just gave you, the positive examples, the good stuff I just found in that, even that is just mired with shit. It's just mired in, like, the whole thing, every part of it is just painted with rhetorical nonsense. And as I mentioned at the start, amnesia, political amnesia. Let's look at the halting of the early release of offenders, right? This is something which I said it seemed like a good idea. It does seem like a good idea. If someone's a dangerous criminal, they shouldn't be released early. It's common sense, wouldn't you say? Common sense is a horrible term, by the way, but the consensus would be that dangerous criminals should stay in jail. Now, it seems like a good idea, but this has been done before under the guise of indeterminate sentences. Government's use of indeterminate sentences in the past led to thousands of prisoners being held for a lot longer than it should have been. The issue of indeterminate sentences got so bad, specifically the case of James, Well and Lee versus the United Kingdom. This is a European Court of Human Rights case. Spoilers, the European Court of Human Rights was involved, and they judged the use of indeterminate sentences to be unlawful. They were a miscarriage of justice. This was the European Court of Human Rights that stated this. What they said about indeterminate sentences within the judgment at the time was detaining prisoners who were subject to indeterminate sentences of imprisonment for the public protection, IPP sentences, indefinitely on grounds of risk without giving them access to rehabilitative courses was arbitrary. So, I mean, now that we're out of the EU, I guess it's no surprise that Home Secretary Priti Patel feels that the European Court of Human Rights is somehow now so out of reach that she's trying to revive legislation that European Court of Human Rights has already deemed as unlawful. Although she's given it another name, and let's be clear about this, when the government say they want to halt the early release of offenders who pose a danger, that is more or less the same as an indeterminate sentence. That is just saying that if we think someone's too dangerous, we can decide to keep them in jail as long as we want. And as I said, it's already been found to be unlawful by the European Court of Human Rights, which blows my mind. So the negatives in the police crime sentencing and courts bill. Here at the top of this list of bad things in this gigantic pot of word soup that government released last week are government's latest attempts to strip us all of our right to peacefully protest or legally protest, whatever you want to put it. I just put our right to protest. This was not in any way a shock or a surprise to me, as one of the first things government did when the pandemic hit and they wanted to take control of everything was they removed the right that we all have to peacefully protest and to peacefully gather and protest. This was made illegal with punishment of go home orders, fines, jail, you name it, it's there. The government can stop us gathering in groups of people. Unless you're like a supporter of Rangers FC or Tommy Robinson, then you can go nuts apparently. But if you're from a black or ethnic background, if you're a woman, don't you dare protest. How dare you speak up? Like, what the hell? And this is happening. We've seen this in the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, Rangers supporters were allowed to run riot through Glasgow city centre and the police stood back. Yet this weekend, women were at a vigil, not just women, there was a lot of people who were holding a candlelit vigil for someone who died, and the police thought, well, we better show them who's boss, and got all violent with them. It's insane, it blows my mind. So the announcement states that the Home Office is aiming to, quote unquote, strengthen police powers to tackle non-violent protests that have a significant disruptive effect on the public or on access to Parliament. So what was that? Have a significant disruptive effect. Now, I will just say that the wording in the press release that I'm reading here is not the same as the wording in the bill. The wording in the bill is a lot more brutal and a lot more unfair. There is no hiding the intentions of this objective. Government appear to be allowing police, or even worse, politicians, to define and decide what is violent or not. They will decide what disrupts the public and what doesn't, or what is violent and what is not, or what is inconvenient and what is not. This is important because we already have a system in place to make these decisions, and they're called the courts. What this new crime police sentencing courts thing does is it's trying to find ways that police can avoid the courts. That is not how justice is supposed to work in the UK. We have courts. Police are not judges. Police are not there to judge if someone has broken the law or not. The police are there to find people who they believe have broken the law, who they can prove have broken the law. They then give this to the procurator fiscal or the courts, whatever I forget what the English version is, the Crown. And the courts then decide who is guilty and who is not, who is inconvenient, who is not, who is violent, who is not. That is not a police decision. This is a part of this bill that is being missed by many, is that it's giving police too much powers. Like it's trying to give them the powers to decide who needs to be punished, and that is not how things are supposed to work. The police are not the law. They are just upholders of the law. But I mean, allowing politicians and the police, who we've got to remember are put in place and regulated by politicians to literally judge what is right or wrong, is something we should all be very, very, very worried about. This is not a case of something being done to protect the public. This is a move to protect a government which fears scrutiny. This is a move you will only ever see done by a government who fears its own citizens. Government have acted so corruptly, so badly, mistreated people to such high levels during the coronavirus pandemic that they know that as soon as people are allowed back on the streets, people are going to protest. People want to know, sorry, where did the 37 billion for test and trace go? And government are trying to stop this at the pass. Government are trying to make it impossible for people to protest how badly they have just acted over the last year. And they're going to do this by removing our freedoms. This is a classic way of doing it. The police are just stooges for politicians. That's what they do. And allowing politicians and police this right to judge what is done, it's really not cool. Why would a government do something like this? They will only ever do this if they fear a backlash from their citizens. They fear that the people that they rule over are going to fight back. A government which fears its citizens does not have their interests at heart. They cannot. It's impossible. How can a government have you or I interest in heart when at the same time they fear that you or I are going to start fighting back against them? They can't. It's impossible. The fact that government are treading into this territory really does show you that they have where they're wanting to go in the future. It's not about looking after us, it's about looking after themselves and protecting themselves. While removing the right of British citizens to peacefully gather and protest sounds bad, it's scary, but it's not ridiculous. Bastardite authoritarian dictators across the world maintain their corrupt holds over power in this exact same way. They remove protest and the ability for the press and the public to hold them to account over the things they do or do not do. The most ridiculous of the Patlan's ideas, that's Patel, Buckland's, let's make this stick. However, their ideas stray way past bad into the territory of farce. They are talking about prison sentences for murderer children. Like what the f***? It's in there. The idea that they're going to increase the maximum penalty for criminal damage of a memorial from 3 months to 10 years. I don't think you could roll out a law that shags the Great British statues any harder. Now you may be thinking, this law's stupid, but it's not that bad. Then I say ask yourself, where do most protests happen? Government are beginning to roll out laws which not only stop protesting, but they make the task of protesting even harder, whether it's small, large, peaceful or not. And then they're doing this by they're making it illegal to gather, illegal to protest. They're making it so they can judge if something's inconvenient, they can get rid of it. And then there's the other parts like this, for instance, like the whole thing, the laws on memorials. Most protests happen near a memorial. So if they catch someone doing anything to that memorial, that person can get punished even harder. Protesting in an area that the police judge to be causing a significant disruptive effect on the public could lead to a fine. Protesting near Parliament could lead to a go home order. And if this is ignored, then a fine. And if that wasn't bad enough, then the police can go out there and be like, oh, sorry, there's a chip on that statue, that's 10 years in jail for you. This is really bad. This is really, 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 really bad. I would say the only thing we have to do left is protest. But the fact is, if we protest, it's looking like our protests will be seen as some sort of act of insurrection. So maybe we've just got to suck it up and realise that in a year or so's time, we will be seen as insurrectionists and not just people who are vocal about wanting our society to be a better place. So, on that bombshell, I'm going to leave it there. If you follow me on Twitter at Voice Britannia, you will find out when I'm going to be streaming next. And yeah, come in past and we'll have a good chat and we'll have a powwow. You know what I mean? It'll be cool. And hopefully we've got some better stuff to talk about. I mean, the next thing we'll be talking about is probably wrestling. Who knows? But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please share this out to your friends or whatever like that. I'm going to do a clipped down version of this and put it on the YouTube later this afternoon. You all go and have yourselves a great day. Take it easy.